Oh, I've pushed the button. Okay, we're live. We'll give it another 30 seconds for people to join. They made a lot of changes to these Hangouts, so it's actually really neat. It like automatically shares it now and stuff and sends it out to people, so it's pretty handy. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll introduce you, Marco, if that's okay.
That's fine.
All right, let's get started. All right, so welcome everyone to the Ubuntu Online Summit. We've got a week's worth of sessions for you. Unlike other summits, these aren't just going to be planning sessions on features. Like, for example, today we're going to be talking about Juju Share and Juju SOS and other little specs that we're working on. But we're also going to make an effort to have these be instructional to you as well. So instead of you just sitting there listening about what the big data team's going to do, they're actually going to show you how to deploy like a big data stack. Tomorrow, Adam's going to deploy a complicated web stack. So we've chosen Reddit, the Reddit infrastructure. So if you go to that session, you'll know how to deploy Reddit. If you ever wanted your own Reddit, this is the place to learn, I guess. And tomorrow as well, we'll be doing a lot of things with containers. So we'll be talking about deploying workloads from Docker containers, as well as deploying things like an entire Kubernetes stack on top of something so that you can toss your containers on top of there. And Juju will orchestrate all of those things for you. So instead of just sessions and stuff, we're really trying to make an effort to make this more end user related as well. So tomorrow you also see, I'm sorry, on Thursday we'll also have a Q&A office hours. We'll have an hour block where you can sit in IRC and kind of ask us raw questions. And then the IRC channel for this will actually be #Ubuntu-UOS-cloud, which I'm actually not on, so I should do that. UOS-cloud. And there we go. I'll be sitting in the IRC channel responding to questions. If you have a question that you want to ask myself or Marco or whoever's in the sessions, feel free to just toss into #Ubuntu-UOS-cloud and we'll get started. So with that, Marco, Juju Core 1.23 is out. More specifically, 1.23.2, which is the latest point release. We've been working on this version of Juju for a while. I know there's a huge amount of release features and bug fixes, so I figured we'd just basically start with you. You can kind of give us an overview of what's new, and then we can dive into some detail and examples of what is going to make this useful for our users. Does that sound good to everybody?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, cool. All right, so why don't you go ahead and get, so what should I do? Just read off the release notes here, and then you'll talk about each individual feature, or?
Well, I think the features are exciting. We should talk about them, but I think we should highlight the massive amount of bugs that were fixed in this release from previous versions of Ubuntu of Juju.
Okay.
So I think in total we're looking at something like over 50 major bugs were like fixed and resolved. So for anyone who's been using Juju and have been coming across problems while using it, we highly recommend you use the latest stable version, which is now 123.2. It's available in the stable PPA for Juju and is going to likely be backported into Trusty as well as Vivid in the oncoming weeks. I just want to make sure that people realize, in addition to all these amazing features we're going to talk about, quite a few big fixes have dropped in this release as well. So I want to commemorate and thank the core team and the QA team for being vigilant and finding and annihilating these bugs.
Yeah, and one thing that's always important to remember as well is these all get put into the PPA for use in Trusty and 1404. So you don't have to get out of the LTS track if you want to enjoy all these features. And of course, we always deploy to LTS 99% of the time, but most of you know that already. So, all right, Marco, why don't I just go ahead? What are your favorite features so far? We can start with like the top one.
So my favorite feature thus far of the 123 release is Juju Actions.
Okay.
I think it's one of the best features in my opinions, but I've also found a lot of really cool use cases for it. All the other features are really cool just as well, but this is probably my favorite one that's come and landed in this release in 123.
Okay, so what does that do for me? I know you've seen one of my charms where I'm doing really, really bad things with Juju SSH to a unit after I've deployed it, and then I want to do things to that unit, right, or to that service, right? So sometimes, so I can Juju SSH either to that unit, or I can Juju SSH to that service, which will be all the units, and then I do things what I consider basic lifecycle stuff, right? Copy data onto that, or get in there, copy stuff into a bucket, and then leave. Like I'm doing maintenance kind of stuff, and then. You were mentioning to me that actions really makes this nice and clean. Can you kind of explain, or can you show me actually something?
George, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. Kind of lagged out for a second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so no, it's no worries. So there's lots of really cool things you can do with actions. Basically, what has come out of actions is there are strongly typed Juju run statements or Juju SSH statements. So anytime you have to do anything with Juju SSH or Juju run, more often than not, if you're expecting any user to do that, you should embody that as an action in Juju. So there's actually, with this latest 123 release, there is a nice in-depth guide in the charm author section for what actions are and how to actually create actions and the whole bits that go along with that. Let me just drop that there in the IRC channel for those watching along. So for your case, I've deployed actually a charm which we can kind of see what this looks like. So I'm just going to share my screen real quickly, kind of show how we took a common thing that's done in the Cassandra charm and we embodied it as an action. So
Your bandwidth looks like it's throttling, so you might want to kill if you've got a background download or something. Makes the terminal kind of hard to read.
I don't have anything running. That's why I thought it was maybe you.
Okay. Increase the font size 1, then that should be enough. And then I'll go ahead and throttle back my bandwidth as well.
Is that better?
Yes, much better. Much better.
I've got a little service deployed. It's just Cassandra running in Amazon. I have 123.2 downloaded and installed on my machine. I've got a Cassandra unit. It is up and running and started. So one thing that we do with Cassandra a lot is we like to run stress tests against it so we can deploy Cassandra, add units for Cassandra. I just realized I forgot to set a configuration option for Cassandra. 1 second.
And what are you doing here for people who don't know what setting a config option is?
So Cassandra has exposed a set of configuration parameters that you can apply for it. This is something that gets set across all machines that are running inside this Cassandra service group. So all units of Cassandra will have this configuration applied. And what's great about actions is it actually helps simplify some of the configuration load. A lot of time people have been trying to embody in configuration what was actually an action for a service. In this case, this is actually a configuration option for allow single node. I'm cheap, so I don't want to run too many Cassandra nodes. And really, you should run Cassandra with more than one additional unit of it. So I'm just going to set this to true. This will allow us to actually use Cassandra as just one machine. So again, I've got this machine. I've got a Cassandra running. We can see it here. So one thing that we normally do is you can actually run this tool called Cassandra Stress. So what you would do is normally is SSH into the Cassandra unit. And then once in there, you have full terminal, your SSH into the machine. You can run a series of commands, and then that would generate output. You can go through and grep that output and get what you wanted from it. This is quite tedious for normal users to do, and it doesn't quite embody the repeatability that Juju provides. So what you have now is you have a Juju action command. So I can say Juju action defined for Cassandra, and it says there is a stress action that I can perform against this. And if I want,
so the define keyword shows me all the actions that you've written for that charm, right?
Exactly.
So it's kind of a list all actions. Okay.
Basically. So the Juju action itself will let you know all the subcommands you can run. There's define, which is essentially listing. There's do, which is to execute an action. You can fetch the results. There's help, and there's a status command. So I'm going to go ahead and just add this schema flag. And this actually says not only are actions just the thing you can run against the unit, they actually also take a set of parameters or properties you can apply to that action. So it's much like a single task, which can expose a set number of configuration options, much how like a service is encapsulated in a charm, and that charm itself has configurations embodied within it. So I'm going to go ahead and wait for this fire truck to pass by.
Always. This always happens to us.
Wow. They're coming right down my street. Excellent.
Okay, you're good.
I'm so glad. The blaring horn, of course. So just real quickly, what I can do then is say, okay, if I wanted to tweak these parameters, for those who know Cassandra, these are the standard stress parameters that you can supply to a Cassandra. You can go through and change all of these features or any one of these. I'm just going to leave them as default and say Juju action do Cassandra stress. If I wanted to, I could add in a set of parameters at the end here saying things like trust store or set the number of records or super columns. I'm just going to run it off once. I need to do it against a unit. This would be helpful. So this actually initiates the stress action, gives it a unique identifier so I can find it later on in the system. And this executes the action as if it the action on the unit the same way you'd expect a hook to be fired, only it's in an action context. So I can actually do Juju action status. I can see the output of the action. It is currently running. I can attempt to fetch results from it. Juju action fetch from this UUID, this big old UUID here. It's still running, so I don't have any data. This will complete in about a minute or two, then I'll be able to get a full set of results back. So not only is it a way that you can reliably, repeatably run tasks against a service or a unit, it also gives you a way to feed back data to the user as a basic YAML dictionary of keys and values. So it's great as a way for you to embody these consistent tasks, things where you would want to run something or run a series of commands. In big data world, we have a TerraSort action. In the MySQL and database world, we have backup and restore actions, as well as benchmark actions, as well as other actions that you would normally take against the lifecycle of a service. All of those are now embodied in a repeatable and composable way for a service. So this is going to take a few minutes to run, but that's essentially the idea and what you get with actions.
Yeah, and we have a whole session on benchmarking with actions tomorrow. So check on the schedule on summit.ubuntu.com. So, okay, moving on. So that's actions. Let's just see if we can get a result here before we move on.
We can go ahead and move on. We can come back later and check on this.
Okay, cool. Okay, so actions. What next?
So another thing that was released in 123.2 is support for the Google Compute Engine as a provider.
Okay.
So this is fantastic news. It's another supported cloud. Not only can Juju deploy onto Google Compute Engine, but we also have the canonical published Ubuntu cloud images on there. So the same reliability, the same security, the same repeatability you expect from all the other public clouds that we support, we also have images there. So even if you're not using Juju, you at least have that as a base to build on. But Juju will work natively with Google Compute. So all of these charms that we've been demoing for the past several years across all these substrates, Google Compute Engine will now be able to deploy those same workloads as you would any other cloud. That's very exciting for those who are looking for an affordable but robust and fast cloud.
Yeah, so I tried it last week. It was pretty good. I was able to get up and running in about 4 minutes and 30 seconds is when the instance fired up. There are some issues with the documentation as it was published. So Eric Snow says that he's going to get back to that. And hopefully by the time you see this video, you'll be able to just fire it up on GCE. Also of note, Juju Quick Start does not yet have GCE support, but I found that bug last week, and those guys are on that. So you should be able to type Juju Quick Start -I, and then from all the list of clouds, choose Google Compute Engine, go into the console, get your little JSON snippet with your private key, and just follow the instructions that it gives you. So it was pretty nice. I like that. It was really granular. I was generating graphs with like my stats right away. It scaled up and scaled down just fine. Because it is a new cloud, I didn't really know how it worked though. So when I was done, I kind of deleted the project, and now I have to recreate a new one and put all those settings back in. So I think what I'm going to do is create like a top level things that I deploy with Juju project and GCE, and then never delete that. Otherwise, I'll be editing the config file over and over and over again. But I couldn't really figure out. I was trying to leave, and I was too lazy to Juju destroy environment because I knew that was going to take a while. So I just went in the web console and killed it. So lesson learned there. Don't do that. All right, what's next as far as features here?
In addition to the Google Compute Engine, we also have official support in Juju for systemd.
Okay.
So for any users who are using the local provider in Vivid or beyond, or if you're trying to deploy services with Vivid Charms, you'll need 123.2 or later in order for that to work properly. Before, Juju simply assumed Upstart. Now it has the proper cancellation to know to manipulate more than one init system, in this case, including systemd. So that's exciting news as we continue to move on to systemd support in Ubuntu. That's also being supported and withheld inside of Juju as well.
Right. Now, for most of you, if you're deploying to Trusty, there's really no change there. This is more of preparing us for the next LTS so that the client and all that supports systemd. So when 1604 comes around, we hopefully won't have a lot of issues. One best practice we have been telling people, however, though, when you're writing your charms, you're doing start, stop, that sort of thing, using the service command actually doesn't really change in between. The team made that nice and transparent in between Upstart and systemd. So generally speaking, if you're starting, stopping, and restart services, no changes to charms. If you're doing a little bit, digging in a little deeper, then yeah, you're going to have to make some changes. But you've got almost a year to make that happen. So that's cool. I see one on here that I've heard a lot of people talking about as far as new features as well. Tell me what service leader elections are.
Service leader elections.
Supposed to be important.
Well, this is quite an exciting feature as well. It's marked as experimental in this release, meaning that you won't be able to access it without setting a feature flag on Juju. The feature flag is, and it's kind of hard to spell out, but it's basically, I don't remember the exact name now. It's Juju_dev_feature_flags. And if you set that equal to leader, I believe, you will get the leader election support enabled when you perform bootstraps. So this is actually quite an awesome feature. For those of you who are interested in this concept after I explain it, you'll want to look into this more. You can contact us in the Pound Juju channel or Pound Juju Dev to talk more about this feature, how to use it, how to start consuming it. We'll be presenting some initial docs in the Devel branch of the docs. So you'll have those as reference, as this will become a stable feature in 124, which is the next release. So at a high level,
3 months, 3 months-ish, 6 months.
Well, the release team will release when it's ready, but we're kind of timelining for 2 to 3 months, I think, from now.
Okay, got it.
So in the somewhat near future, you'll be having this in 124. The way this works is when you have a service group of more than one unit, the units can request a leadership, in which case Juju will assign one of the unit's leaders, and there are several hooks you can model around this, mainly leader elected, leader changed, and leader deposed, where once a leader is elected, that leader has the ability to set configuration within itself. So it can do this idea of leader set and keys, much like you can relation set. And that is simply the leader can set keys that are available across all of the units in a service group. And they can get those configuration values by typing leader get. This also helps solve issues around kind of highlighting within Juju, within a service, what the unit of that, which one is the leader, how to determine this ideas of quorum and such. A lot of that can be modeled by having Juju simply select the leader. So I should say that this isn't necessarily that the leader will be the primary or master node in a configuration, but it is the node that has been raised and designated to be the identifying node of that service. So it could be that it's also the master. But the idea is that when Juju looks for questions and queries about a service group, as well as a unit to be able to disperse information within that unit service group, that node that Juju selected will be there for you. So how the charm handles that logic is still up to the charm author, whether they make that the designated leader node or whether they simply have it to say, I know where the leader is, this is the leader, and tell the rest of the group about it, as well as the user from Juju status. That's up for implementation details. At a very high level, you'll have a unit selected by Juju to be the leader of that service group.
And I know we had some charms that were implementing this on their own. This will allow us to do things like non-racy OpenStack charms, right? The Postgres charm should be much simpler, things of that nature. So that's basically like a first-class primitive now in Juju, I guess is what you're trying to say.
Right. Exactly. The OpenStack charms specifically are really looking forward to this as they're able to model, or they have been modeling leadership in an ad hoc, out-of-band way using peer relation. A lot of that code becomes much more simplified and easier to consume and maintain because Juju is now doing that election for you.
Excellent, excellent. Another experimental feature, addressable LXC containers and KVM instances on AWS and MAS. What does this mean?
So this is another great feature. This allows, if anyone has deployed to an LXC or a KVM container in a cloud, you know that it sets up a bridge on that machine, and it actually has no way to address itself outside of that unit. Not to each other, let alone to a public surfacing address. So if you deploy WordPress to a LXC container inside of Amazon, that address has no way of getting outside of the network. So that WordPress is essentially not accessible unless you have HA proxy actually running on the machine that is there. With this change in MAS and AWS, when you deploy to a LXC or KVM container, you will actually also get an EC2 public addressable and private IP address assigned to that container within the machine. So not only will containers be able to talk to themselves on the same node, the same machine, also other machines deployed by Juju, those containers can talk to each other, and as well as available to the outside world, which is quite exciting.
Right, and this basically removes all excuses for not just deploying into containers every single time, which I've been trying to get into that habit, but things like this lack of this feature made it kind of difficult. So that's really good. Do we have any word when that'll hit the other substrates, or is just AWS and MAS for now?
I haven't the slightest idea of what the roadmap is for this one. I just know that it is currently in AWS and MAS, and I imagine this feature will be grown. Support for this feature will be grown in OpenStack as well rather soon. I do want to make a small amendment. It actually does not do any public IP mapping, just simply private address mapping, so that they'll be able to talk to each other within machines inside the same network, but no actual EC2 IP will be attached to that at the moment. That may be coming in the 124 release. This is also another reason why it's marked as experimental. Just like before, you'll need the Juju_dev_feature_flags. Address-allocation is the flag you'll want to set on Bootstrap in order to gain this feature in 123.
And if you lose track of these flags, of course, feel free to ask us on the devil list.
They're also in the release as well.
Oh, okay. So that takes care of the two experimental features. What are new blocks and messages? I don't see what that's really explained there.
Something we've gotten a lot of feedback from the people who are using Juju and employing Juju in a production environment is the ability to block certain actions from being performed by a user to avoid anything accidental from happening inside of a production environment. So the things that you'll be able to do from here now is there's a Juju block command, and I think it's best just to reshare my screen. Walk through a couple of these as an example. So I've got my machine here. Again, we're running 123.2. There's a Juju block command. So I can type Juju block, or rather Juju help block. And basically, this enables you this allows you to enable blocks on the command. So the commands that you can block are all changes, which means that operations that would change a Juju environment will fail with the message you provide. You can block the ability to destroy environments, and you can also block the ability to remove objects. So anything that would remove an object from the environment is blocked as well. So as an example, if I type Juju block destroy environments.
This is the I'm going on vacation and I don't want George to break anything.
Right.
Right.
If I do destroy an environment, this is best to know what my environment is. This is my environment. Aptly name the region I'm using.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep, do the Y.
Oh, I worried for a second. I don't actually want to destroy this environment yet. So that actually worked the way I wanted it to. Yeah, so it gives you an error, it gives you the message, and it tells you why it's been blocked. So I can unblock this, and then you can block many facets of this. Currently, it's just all changes, destroy environment, remove object, and this list will grow as we get feedback on operations that people would like to block when running this kind of stuff. So block destroy environments, and we should be able to proceed with destroying, although I don't wish to do that.
Yeah, and Juju block list will list them all. I really like remove object because that means you can go on holiday and it lets me add units to scale, but it doesn't let me break anything and remove units. So at worst, I'll kind of neat. All right. We've got improved proxy support for restrictive networks. This is something that's come up a while with all these environment variables for apt. And then you have MAS. We have HTTP proxy, HTTPS proxy, FTP proxy, apt HTTP proxy, all those for HTTPS and no proxy. So as far as I can tell, the biggest difference with this from reading the bug reports is now anytime you set a proxy in the environment file, environments.yaml, we now propagate those variables to every single unit we deploy. Is that correct?
Yes, essentially. We were doing something like this similarly, but now we do it even more aggressively on Bootstrap nodes and all the units deployed, setting proxies everywhere that we can feasibly set them so that things are routed properly through that proxy.
Good, good. So this should make especially long-running install hooks that install a ton of packages, and you want all those to hit the proxy and not mess that up. So that's good to know on that one. Anything else there on proxy support? That just seems kind of like a list of fixed bugs there, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, that's essentially what you get.
Okay, and then the last feature is new style restore. This is something to do with a backup command. Maybe since we got time, kind of give us a quick overview of the backup command actually, because I'm not sure that everybody knows how to use this one there.
Right. So the backup command is something that was added into Juju 2 or 3 releases ago, I believe, at this point now. It was added as a plugin that was installed by Juju. So it wasn't actually Golang code. It was actually Bash code that ran and did a central backup of the environment. In 123.2, this gets folded into Juju core itself. It's changed the parameters a little bit. So if you were using the Juju backup plugin previously in any automated scripts, this has since been changed in some of the flags you supply. So you have a now Juju backups command. If you run this, it tells you these things you can do. You can create backups. You can download backups. You can get information about things. You can list all of the backups. You can remove backups. You can restore backups. And you can upload backups from another environment. So backups, again, are not backups in the sense you think of a service level backup where you're backing up data directories for databases, files from a web service. This is a backup of Juju's state. So I think we actually have a little bit of time. It'll take about 10 minutes, and we can talk through what's going on, but we can actually back up my environment and restore it again. So let me just go ahead and create a backup. Juju backups. Create. This will go do its thing. Before, this was just the Juju backup command. And also, after it completed the backup, it would just download into the current directory you were in. This has changed slightly again from that format to this one, where it'll create the backup, it'll block until completed, and then you can download the archive file or choose to restore. So this is a great way to checkpoint deployments. If you add a bunch of units and change a bunch of configuration files and add a bunch of relations and you find out it wasn't quite the way you want, you can restore to a previous state. Juju will rectify that state and allow you to start back from then again. So you get some output, the identifier, which is another, which is a time-stamped UUID, a checksum from that backup, some dates and some notes, some additional things. I guess it probably would have been better if I actually did Juju backup create with the help flag. You can kind of see, oops, backups. There we go. These are things you can apply to it. You can apply file names to this. You can ask it to download. You can apply a notes field as well, so you can add some additional details about this backup, what it was created from, if it was auto-generated by a script you created, or if there's other metadata to be known about it. Otherwise, you'll just get a timestamped UUID, which is not very informative. So if I look in my directory, there should be a backup file. I have a Juju backup from today with the timestamp and everything. This is the one I just created. It downloaded it for me. So what I'm going to do now is destroy my environment. But before I do, I'm just going to do backups list. It should list that I have one backup, when it was created, all the pieces of information that I'll need to know from it. This is the one I just ran a few moments ago. This is listing it on the remote server. So I'm going to do Juju destroy environment, AWS S2, yes.
So while you're doing that, do we provide a method? Like, I was just thinking in my head with actions, what I'd really like to do is take a snapshot of my stuff and shove it off to a bucket somewhere.
Yes, yeah. That's a great thing. So we have some mechanisms that we're coming out with in Juju that'll help with that. But really, there is, I mean, backup of service level data is still very charm specific. I can think of a few. The Postgres charm is one I consistently come back to from a standpoint of it does the best it can to preserve your data, as well as the logic that's implemented there is quite fantastic. It'll actually do daily snapshots of your data in a directory and keeps the last 5 days. Having that later then be rsync to your computer, or you can use Juju SCP to download that, or potentially publish that to an S3 endpoint. We have people who've been building charms around that concept. So there are people who are tackling the backup problem. It's not an easy one to solve in a general way. It's kind of hard to model backups in a very agnostic fashion. Every service does something unique and different. So I think actions can help with that, where you can have an action to create a backup or a dump, which will then present you with a file path you can download. And alternatively, you should be able to rsync or designate, here's the file on my local computer, please restore from this file. We don't have a way to specify a file upload mechanism in Actions as of yet, but there is more work to be done on Actions. This isn't the last iteration of it. So you'll be seeing more changes in the upcoming releases this next 6 months in Juju to help facilitate that from an action standpoint. I very much hope to one day have the ability to type Juju action, do MySQL restore, MySQL dump. Something like that, where it'll actually take the contents and upload this file and provide a file path on the local machine in the action, so the action knows where the file was uploaded. Something like that would actually be quite powerful in a backup restore world, where each service just models it the way it needs to, and then you use actions as a way to execute that.
Yeah, because what I was thinking, sorry, I'm just brainstorming out loud here, right? What I want to do is set up my stuff and then kind of set up actions and whatnot to copy the right blobs to the right buckets, right? And then if that breaks, ping me or something like that. That way I know I have consistent, repeatable backups all the time, as part of the thing I'm modeling, right? So I don't just want to model the service and how it works and how it scales, but I want to take the backups, right? Take backup policy basically and make that a first-class citizen, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Certainly. There really is no easy way to do it at the moment. Actions can be a mechanism for that. We've done that with benchmarking, and I'll be happy to talk about that later on this week during the benchmarking session, how we kind of standardize that as a first-class citizen for Juju using actions. I think actions can be utilized in much a similar fashion, where you could just deploy a backup orchestrating service, which knows all of the services that provide a backup interface, and then simply have them flush that out, and then you publish those somewhere. That seems quite feasible in a Juju model.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it does. Okay, and that new style restore is basically the last feature that we have here. I'm going to wait in IRC, see if anyone has any questions. Let's see, is there anything else we haven't covered? GCE, systemd, new style restore, proxies, actions, blocks of messages, leader elections, and addressable containers. A ton of bugs fixed. Let me just scroll through these, see if any of these are worthy of note. Let's see. There's a ton of them. Juju status format tabular, I think, is a good one. I think you showed that earlier.
Yes.
Basically, we have a bunch of new formats for status. If you want to run through those just really quick, just to show off what.
Well, I'm currently bootstrapping my environment, so not a lot to show.
Oh, okay.
These are the formats you can supply now. Before, it was simply JSON and YAML. YAML being the default output, quite a lot of text to read through. And that was great, and that got us by. But as more people are using Juju, the feedback has been watching Juju status is not very helpful. From a high level, I don't want to comb through all these details, kind of squash it down. So one line and short are aliases to each other. They are what Juju pprint once was as a plugin. So if you're using Juju pprint, you can completely stop using that now. It's all native within Juju. You can do Juju format short or Juju status format one line. Summary and tabular are much the same, I believe, as well. They're both the same output. As soon as I get an environment, hey, I have an environment. Juju status format summary. Summary and tabular are both two different things. One is more impressive than the other, but they're both interesting to look at. So it's kind of hard to see because this is my terminal is blown up by several inputs. But I have, from a tabular, I have a machines and services and units. These all display data that looks like this. Let's go up a little bit in time. Back to the future. So I have machines. In previous deployment, I had 2 machines. These are the informations about that. I had 1 service deployed, Cassandra. This was the charm. I had 1 unit of Cassandra. It was started. This is the version, the machine it's on, the ports that were open, the public address. The summary one is much similar in a way. It just simply has a very high-level summary of the numbers of things that you have, the numbers of units and their states. So I have 1 machine that started. I have 0 units, 0 services. This would be expanded to show me things that were organized by state, essentially. So I can show this status stuff a little better. Let me just finish the backup restore stuff. I'm actually going to go ahead and just restore the backup of the state server from the previous deployment, Juju backups. Let's see. We need to upload backup.
This would be cool if it works.
This is something that I've actually tested myself. So fire by demo. Yeah, just need to give it a file name. Seems simple enough.
Yeah.
It's Juju.
And there was a time date stamp in there somewhere.
I switch to my other terminal not being shared and figure out what the heck that file name is. Actually, there it is. Tab complete on this command would be super helpful as a bug I will file later. I'll just go ahead and upload this back up to the state server. It's the worst that could happen. Then after that, I believe I'm going to run list just to make sure that I have it listed in the remote server. And if I do, I'm going to run restore, and I should see the state re-reflected as the previous Cassandra charm. Again, will not have my data that was in there, but it'll have the state that was preserved. And if I was doing things like backups, I could restore them at that point to that previous state.
Right. So it'd be a two-step process: your state and your data. It would be cool to do all at once, but
I imagine, I mean, things being
someday.
progressive, that we could see this happening, where maybe we model things like restoring machine disks back to state and such. There's a lot of things we can do from this feature. So it's successfully read my file. I should have a Juju backups list. There it is. Juju status. Again, just the bootstrap node, Juju backups.
Restore.
Figure out what I need to run here. Restore from a backup archive to a new state server.
ID right there. -- ID, and then the.
Oh, but I
could
have provided just a file for it. That would have been a lot easier. I'm making it more complicated than I need to. So -- ID is this huge guy right here. So Juju backups. Restore you. Oh.
-- yeah. -- ID. Do tabular this time for the status.
Yep. Just as soon as this command. All right. I guess we can see what happens. So this is the short format. Again, it's pretty condensed. Probably going to hang because I'm kind of killing the Bootstrap server right now. I'll give it a second. We'll go ahead and scroll through some more bugs. I'll just keep an eye on this.
Yeah, that's basically the list. I know with the last releases, we added support for Windows and CentOS. I just want to add that out there if you're new to Juju and just kind of checking out this video. We have that. No word on when Cloudbase is going to publish those charms, though. So actually, there are no charms that you can actually deploy. Well, I can see
there are a few actually uploaded.
Really? Do you see them?
Sure. 1 second. I will go find them.
Like, it would be nice to be able to just search in the store Windows or CentOS or something and have that come up. So.
There are 3 charms currently uploaded to the Win 2012 HVR2 series. This is Windows Server 2012 HV Rev 2. There is the Nova Hyper-V charm, which allows you to use Nova Compute on top of Hyper-V. And there's also the Ubuntu charm uploaded to the, I'm not sure why it's there, but it's a no-op charm, so it should just work fine.
Is there a way to query series just from jujuterms.com?
Not that I know of, but there is this URL, which is what I typically use, which you could do code.launchpad.net/charm/series name.
Okay.
Not sure about ingesting into charm store bits. I mean, at least the Juju GUI portion, these should be in the charm store proper. So you should be able to deploy CS:/squiggly OpenStack Charmer /Win 2012 HVR2 /Nova Hyper-V. Okay.
We have a question from XET7. Has there been tests to use Juju with CRIU to live migrate Docker containers to other servers?
Great question. So a lot of the guys with LXD have been using CRIU, which is a migration tool that was open source from Parallels and Virtuoso, which was using the OpenBZ stack. Juju doesn't actively use anything from CRIU at the moment for any kind of migrations. So it's a great question. Could Juju grow to use CRIU? It's possible. Juju doesn't actually deploy or manage Docker containers directly, but charms that do that could potentially use CRIU within the charm. So the fact that Juju doesn't use it doesn't mean that a charm couldn't make use of CRIU for migrating containers between units within its service group, other peers within its service group.
Right.
So that's a great question, but not anything that we see directly in Juju.
I think that this would be great. Not today, but tomorrow we have an entire session of orchestrating Docker containers with Juju. So that's what we'll cover, the Docker charm and as well as Kubernetes and whatnot. And I think if you could re-ask that question there, or I'll remember to ask, that'd be a good question for that topic, I think.
Yeah, and the same user XET7 also asked, would you use Juju and CoreOS together or Juju instead of CoreOS, which is a great question as well. Juju has no way of deploying to a CoreOS, the CoreOS operating system at the moment. The series supported by Juju are trusty, precise, most all Ubuntu releases that are recent and stable supported. CentOS, Windows, most all Windows series after 2012. And those are the supported releases currently, with others coming along the way. So Juju and CoreOS really have no correlation to each other at the moment, other than that they happen to embody some kind of service orchestration bits. But Juju deploying to CoreOS may be a feature that's grown in the future, but it's hard to say. It's not something that I can identify on the roadmap at the moment, at least not for the next release of Juju. But that's a great question as well. Thank you.
Okay. So Rick on IRC has given me some tips there on how to find the Windows charms here. If you go to jujucharms.com/q for query /win, matches them better because the actual series is Win 2012 R2. It's not Windows. So if you're searching for there, so I see. Ooh, MS SQL Express.
That's also another point, is that there's more than one Windows series. There's Actually, if I can name off all the series that are on here, but there's quite a few that have been added that have a lot of charms in them outside of that one series that maybe not the best series to use as an example. So we have Windows Server 2012 revision 2, Windows Server 2012 HV R2, Windows Server 2012 Hypervisor, which is HV Rev 1, and CentOS 7, which is also available as well outside of the standard Ubuntu series. And all of those potentially could have one or more charms modeled within them. I imagine, and Rick could probably speak to this better, that series sorting may be something that comes as a future feature to the charm store.
Aha. Here we go. You can do quick. Aha. If you do a search and you click on the series name, it's Q !series equals trusty. So let me look. CentOS. What is it? CentOS doesn't have nicknames, right? Is it CentOS?
CentOS's series name is CentOS 7.
Okay. No charms uploaded for that. But we do have Windows, so.
Right, and that's Win 2012 HVR2, and Win 2012 R2.
I did not know we had MS SQL Express. That's pretty neat. I'm going to have to check that out later. So, all right, with that, that's pretty much everything in Juju 123. We got to go ahead and start winding it up now for the next session, which is going to be charm debugging in the services framework. That's with me, Marco, and then we'll bring Corey in, as well as anybody else who wants to start. And unless there's any more questions in the cloud, I'm going to give it a few more seconds. I'm George Castro. Thanks very much for joining us. This is Marco Ceppi. Go ahead and restore your environment. I guess tear it down or whatever it is you're doing. I don't know what you're doing there.
Well, I'm hoping it restores, but I guess it may take a little longer than.
Yeah,
it's also doing the resource allocation bits, and it'll that's completed.
Yeah, I assume all non-trivial environments for a backup and restore taking not. I assume that takes a long time, right? If you think about what it needs to do to get it back up and running.
Right, exactly.
Very interesting.
Stand up a bunch of machines and then reapply all previous events to those machines.
Yep. So, okay, great. All right, thanks everybody, and we'll see you at the next session at the top of the hour for charm debugging in the services framework. You guys are really going to dig the services framework if you haven't seen that before. So thank you very much.
Thank you.